you feeling okay? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. رب زدني علما رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير. In our last lesson, Fiqh lesson number 10 here from Darul Ummah, Jamia Masjid in East London, we reached up to page number 70 or 71 of the book that we are reading, Ascent to Felicity, Maraq al-Sa'adat by Sheikh Ashurun Bulali, translated by Faraz A. Khan. And we have been covering we've started to cover the rules and regulations of the 5 pillars of Islam. And we've spoken briefly about an introduction, and then about the general concept of the things that we believe in, our aqidah, generally what is founded upon, and then we've moved swiftly on without spending too much time on the aqadi debates and the philosophical or logical or the ikhtilafat bayn al-ulama in the general concept of the aqidah issues and the asma al-sifat and so on and so forth, even though it may have been interesting to do so. But I prefer to move on to what's relevant mainly to us as people who want to make sure our ibadat are accurate, our salawat, our zakat, our hajj and our psalm and so on and so forth. And one of the things that we highlighted and said back then in around lesson number 3 was that and the reason I'm going back to it is because someone asked me about it recently, and they were not happy about how we let the aqad issues just pass by. And the argument was that you are giving a dars in an open masjid, and the people that are in front of you may not be experienced tullab al-ilm, and therefore we should go into deep aqidah issues. So basically what we said is that because it's an open dars, we don't want to go into deep aqidah philosophical issues or mukhtalaf fihi or the differed upon issues. We just want to suffice with what makes you, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his Sahaba, when he was asked in Hadith Jibril, Mal Islam or Mal Iman and so on and so forth, those things are the ones that we covered and we understood and we accepted and we said we believe in this. There are no doubts in those whatsoever. And therefore, inshallah, we are hopeful that our iman is complete with those beliefs at hand. And of course, by believing in the ghaybiyat and the things of the akhirah, the yawm al-qiyamah, the hashr and the nashr and so forth, jannah and jahannam, we believe in these things without any doubt. These are known famously. And so, inshallah, our iman is complete in that sense. As for, do we have to debate the concept, the topic, the subject of aqidah to become Muslims? Then, to be honest, the whole debates of aqidah were not around until much later, and the Sahaba were not found to be debating aqadi issues or aqidah issues, and therefore to suggest that we need to delve into aqidah issues for us to be correct Muslims or to understand our deen correctly is not a coherent argument, for example. But generally we suffice with what we believe, that inshallah if you know these, if you believe in these, then inshallah our iman is complete. So we said that we believe in the angels and his books and so on and so forth, and that's all in the previous lessons. I thought I'd just get that point clarified, because it's not that we dislike the topic of aqidah or tawheed. It's just that it is an open dars and we want to move on to what's going to be beneficial on our day-to-day basis. As long as our iman is intact and correct, we want to go and focus on our salawat and our hajj and our other activities. Now, that's not to say that if the debate was to come along that we can't get involved or that we couldn't argue. Inshallah we can, and inshallah we can go into the debates quite well, inshallah. But generally we want to avoid it as much as possible, because we don't want to get into too many different issues without without great benefits in it. Anyways, going back to page 71 of Maraq al-Sa'adat, we said that there are, after speaking about the times of prayer, we are speaking today inshallah about the times in which it is makruh for you to pray. Okay? And the sentence is, there are 3 times of the day in which prayers that were obligatory before these times is rendered invalid if performed in these times. Okay? So generally, if there were any salah. So normally salahs are obligatory, like for example, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib is obligatory for that day. In these times, if you pray them, then it's not going to be done. Except for one exception, and we're going to come to that inshallah. The first one is at sunrise. During sunrise, if you pray the Fajr of that day, then it's not going to be counted. You'll have to pray your Fajr again after the sun has completely risen. At midday, Zawal, which is about, when the sun is right in the middle of the sky. And at sunset, except for Asr of that day. So we said, remember we spoke last time and you asked me afterwards about to explain the whole difference, and we did that. So these are 3 times in which, al-awqat al-makruha, the disliked times in which we shouldn't pray nawafil, and except for the sunset time, only at sunset time, the exemption is that you can pray Asr of that day. If it was the Asr of the previous day or general qada of Asr, then during the sunset time itself, while it's setting, those 20 minutes we spoke about so much last time, you shouldn't pray, you should pray afterwards, inshallah. It is disliked to pray voluntary prayers in the following times. So now it's talking about, first it spoke about the obligatory prayers, now it's talking about it is disliked to pray voluntary nawafil prayers in the following times. The 3 times mentioned above, at sunrise, at midday, at sunset, except for Asr of that day. Now a question that came afterwards, after the class, and we'll just bring it in now, is that, some people, and not just some people, but loads of people, and other madhahib generally, they allow, say for example, for you to come and pray Tahiyyatul Masjid. Like when you come to the masjid to pray those 2 rakat, even if it's one of those makruh times. And the explanation on their part would be generally, and obviously I'm not an expert in that, or nor I'm not suggesting to be an expert in anything, but generally we are trying to cover some issues that will help us to inshallah become better Muslims. Generally that is the whole idea. But according to them, one of the arguments would be that any prayer that's got a sunnah backing, as in it's mentioned in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, it's got a sabab behind it, it's got a reason behind it, and the reason would be something from the sunnah of the Quran, then those prayers you are allowed to pray. Khalas? So for example, Tahiyyatul Masjid, it's mentioned in the sunnah, and therefore praying that is fine. So the ones that the salawat that you shouldn't pray are those which are completely voluntary according to them, completely voluntary, and haven't been mentioned in the sunnah to be praying at those particular. But generally, Tahiyyatul Masjid or those ones are mentioned. Prophet said in the hadith that when you come into a masjid, then you should pray 2 rakats. It's there, different sentencing or different phraseology, different phrasing, but it's there generally. So it is disliked, here it's saying, to pray voluntary prayers in the following times, in the free time, at the 3 times, or during the 3 times mentioned above, and they are sunrise, midday, and sunset, except for the Asr of that day at sunset time. But of course we're talking about nawafil now, so generally the 3 times mentioned above, those 3 times, no nawafil, it is better for you not to pray. During a religious sermon, khutbah, and again this is a different mas'ala, if you're talking about voluntary prayers, then he is basically generally talking about anything that's not fard. So now we're talking about sunnah prayers. Of course, other ulama or other madhahib, they will say that for you to come into the masjid, and if you see that the imam has stood up for his khutbah, then you should still pray a sunnah. Right? Here it's telling you that during a religious sermon, a khutbah, or the khutbah of the Jum'ah, if you have sunnah that you haven't prayed before that, then you should stop and wait, listen to the khutbah, because it's a part of the Jum'ah prayer itself, and therefore you should listen to that, that's more important. And then if there were any sunnah, or if there was a sunnah prayer remaining from before, then you could pray it afterwards, and there's no harm in that, inshallah ta'ala. So voluntary prayers is talking about any general non-fara'id prayers, inshallah. I think that's what it means, or that is what it means, inshallah. The 3 times mentioned above. And during a religious sermon, before the obligatory prayer of Fajr, except for the 2 rakahs of Sunnah of Fajr that day. Right? So what we're saying is, according to that very famous hadith that you've read in Bukhari and Muslim and other books of hadith, where Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was staying over in his khala's house, Maymuna, and he was staying over, and the Prophet ﷺ was also staying over, and he witnessed that the Prophet ﷺ would wake up in the middle of the night and pray tahajjud, and then he said that, I stood up on his left hand side, so he made me go on his right hand side, and we prayed 2 rakats, and there's 8, and then there's more in other riwayat. But generally in that hadith, we find that the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed nafal, tahajjud, throughout the night, and then he done witr as well, towards the end of the night, and then he prayed, when the waqt, or when the adhan was called out for Fajr itself, he prayed 2 very small rakats of sunnah. Thereafter he rested for a bit more, and then he went to the masjid and he prayed his fard itself. That's one of the evidences, but generally that's to say that after the Fajr sunnah, there shouldn't be another nawafil. Khalas? That's what we're trying to say here. That after the Fajr Sunnah, the next prayer that we pray is the Fajr Fard itself. Of course, if there are other opinions that allow you, please tafaddal. I mean, I want to make it very clear and very obvious to everybody that, we are not an enemy of difference of opinions. We welcome, proper reasonable arguments, and of course, other madhahib, we respect them completely, wholeheartedly. But it's just that we are studying one text here and we're reading out what's there, and inshallah, maybe in the future we'll read other texts from different angles and understand them as well. We are only but students of knowledge, inshallah, tabarak wa ta'ala. So if other madhahib or other opinions say that you can pray after the sunnah of Fajr, other nawafil, then as long as there's reasonable arguments behind it, that's fine. I can't see a problem with it. But generally we're saying here in this book, saying that there are some times in which voluntary prayers, it is disliked to pray voluntary prayers in the following times. The 3 times we've mentioned above. During a religious sermon khutbah, before the obligatory prayer of Fajr, except for the 2 rakahs of Sunnah. After the obligatory prayer of Fajr is performed, without exception until after the disliked time of sunrise. And again, this is the question of why if I prayed, I came into the masjid and the jama'ah was going on and I joined the imam and we prayed Fajr, and then now I've got my 2 sunnahs left, 2 rakat sunnahs left, am I allowed to pray it straight away? Loads of scholars, other madhahib generally, or in fact even majority would probably allow you to do so, that you just pray your sunnah straight after the fard itself. But here it's telling you that don't wait for until after the sunrise. Why? Because there are ahadith warida available there, narrated, mentioned clearly in books of sunnahs, of sunan, of ahadith, okay? Revised i'la or sunan if you like, generally. But there are ahadith mentioned that say that it is disliked for you to pray after the Fajr Fard anything until the sun has risen. Okay, but there are hadith like that. Then we have other narrations that say that someone did come and pray and the Prophet ﷺ didn't exactly say what he didn't tell him off for it. So therefore we see that there are maybe, there are in fact 2 valid opinions. And if someone was, for example, wanted to pray, I personally, if I had prayed my Fard of Fajr and I missed my Sunnah, then as far as this is concerned, we would pray it after the sunrise itself. But if I see someone in the masjid praying the Sunnah of 2 rakat after the Fard Jamaat, and we do see that here in Darul Ummah, after Quran Fajr while it's going on, we see so many people pray the Sunnah, we don't stop them because of course there is no reason for us to be weird or harsh like that. It's fine. Right, after the Asr prayer is performed until sunset. So after the Asr prayer is performed until sunset, you shouldn't pray any Nafil prayers in that time. So say for example, I just prayed my Asr Fard, finished. Okay? Sunset is still coming, I've still got an hour. I feel like praying some Nafil. He's saying that it's better for you not to pray your Nafil now. However, if you have any qadās, like you have got previous salat that you need to make up for, then you can pray those. And that's in the footnote, inshallah, 198. If you read it, it says, generally, after the Asr prayer is performed until sunset, 198 says to you, for the time periods of between true dawn and sunrise, and between the performance of Asr and the dimming of the sun before sunset, make-up prayers can be performed therein. So qada can be performed, but not voluntary prayers, nor the mandatory wajib 2 rakats to be performed upon completion of tawaf. So he's saying to you that even if you have just completed your tawaf, you would normally pray 2 rakats of prayers, two rakats of salah next to Maqam Ibrahim on that side. He's saying to you that if that time happens to be after the Fard of Asr, then it is better for you to wait until after Maghrib in that place, do some adhkar, do some Quran, wait there and then pray those 2 rakats after. Obviously that's a bit far out, maybe you don't even need to know that right now, but that's what's being said here, and we can maybe revise it again when we come back to those times when we go to Umrah or Hajj. It is, however, telling you later on, it would be prohibitively disliked, makruh tahrimi, to do them in these times. Rather, one must wait until after the post-sunrise time period in which prayers are also... after the post-sunrise time period in which prayers are also disliked, and after sunset. Post-sunrise. Yes, so basically, you have to wait for the makruh time to be finished. Okay, so if you are doing tawaf at, say for example, Fajr time, and then your tawaf finished, your 7th circumambulation, your 7th tawaf finished at that time when the sun was rising, then he's saying to you, wait, relax for 20 minutes, do some adhkar, okay, or do some dua, and then pray those 2 rakats after the sun has completely risen. Because why? because there are clear-cut nahi or forbiddings, or it's saying in a hadith that you shouldn't pray prayers at these makruh 3 times. Okay? Any questions so far?
Just on, it says after Asr prayer, is that specifically Asr time, or is it when you've prayed Asr? So is that...
No, after you've performed your Asr prayer.
So
After you, exactly. So as long as when you've performed your fard of Asr, that's a very good question. In fact, it's a good big clarification. After the Asr prayer is performed,
so not the time of Asr.
not the time. After the Asr prayer is performed. So after you've performed your Asr prayer, for you to pray voluntary prayers, it is disliked for you to do so. If you want to do so, pray it before your Asr or pray it after your Maghrib Salah. And in fact, there are strong reasons to pray Nawafil after the Maghrib prayers. We know that there are that's a very good time to pray Nawafil as well. And of course, other du'as and Quran and so on and so forth. It is not valid, and this is where it gets a bit interesting. In fact, in the next topic that we're about to come across, I have written quite a long research on this as a part of the first year masters in Al-Azhar al-Sharif. Obviously, we're covering the specialization in Islamic law, and in the risala, in the thesis itself, is going to be principles of usul al-fiqh, tahassul usul al-fiqh. But generally, we were required by the professors to, as one of the subjects of the 10 subjects that we covered, was called Qa'atul Bahth, or the concept of writing a thesis or a research paper. And so I chose the topic because it was a hot topic, and it still is a hot topic, of the concept of joining prayers, and we spoke a bit about it last week. But we did go into a bit of extensive, reading and researching about the concept. And of course, as you know, there is a strong disagreement, especially from the Hanafi side of things, saying that you shouldn't join any prayers, even if you're musafir. And of course, on the other side, there are people that are saying that you are allowed to join even if you are muqim. Am I making sense? Are those words making any sense? So some Hanafis generally are saying to you that you are not allowed to join prayers even if you're traveling. Hanafis. There are other people on the opposite extreme saying to you that, as long as you've got a reasonable excuse, even if you're in your hometown, you're still allowed to join prayers. Because Prophet ﷺ, there are a hadith that says that, he jama'a bayna salatayn, biduni safarin wala, without any journey, or without any journey excuse. He was in town, he was at home in his hometown, and he joined between two prayers because of rain or any other discomfort or inconvenience, right? But generally, Ahnaf are telling you that you shouldn't join your prayers, even if you're traveling. Okay? Shafi'is, other madhahib, generally, they allow you that. They say that you're allowed to join your prayers, it's no problem. You can join. So you have some that are saying no joining, some that are saying you can join but with conditions. Okay, for example, the conditions are they can only join Dhuhr and Asr at Dhuhr time, and Maghrib and Isha at Isha time, just like you would do in Arafah and Muzdalifah. Does that make sense? You know what Arafah is, right? You know what Muzdalifah is. Generally, when we go to Hajj, Arafah and Muzdalifah, everyone joins. Hanafis, non-Hanafis, everyone alike. Okay, because the hadith, that incident is very, very famous, and we spoke about it a bit last week. But outside of that time, outside of Arafah and Muzdalifah, okay, Ahnaf are telling you no joining. Others are telling you joining but with conditions. And others are telling you, there is another opinion that says general joining. You can join, Maghrib and Asr at Asr time. There is that opinion as well. But generally, these are the famous opinions out there. And obviously, like we said, now obviously in that research paper, it was quite interesting because I was debating the whole difference, and I literally brought forward most of the hadith that discuss the topic, and the ayat as well, and the tafsir of the ayat that mentioned the concept of having, because what the Ahnaf are telling you is that there is a fixed time for every prayer, and that's there in the Quran, that inna as-salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta, that definitely and verily Salah has been prescribed upon believers at fixed times, at specific times, right? And we spoke a bit about that last week. I don't want to go into it, but generally, it's an interesting debate. Someone asked me, a good friend of ours, and his brother that's following the durus from Cairo, he's studying there. You might know him, Brother Ma'een. Generally, lovely brother, one of our top friends, mashallah, maybe he's watching now. But he asked the question was, if I am in a group who are non-Hanafis, and we're all traveling together, okay? And we're traveling together, everyone is joining the prayers. And they're praying Jama'ah as well. I am not joining my prayer because, for example, I'm a Hanafi, strict Hanafi, right? What should I do? Should I pray alone, each prayer at its individual time, and that may require that I make specific and individual stops of the car at those times, as opposed to when everyone else is stopping at a service station, say for example, Dhuhr time and Isha time. So should I go with the flow, with the crowd of people that are following another opinion, or should I strictly stick to my, or the Hanafi, not my, or the Hanafi opinion that you should pray every single prayer in its own time? And so I gave him an answer. Does anyone have an idea what it might be? Well, to be honest, I told him that, and this is again, I'm not saying that this is something that we should brush everything with paint everything with the same brush. And there might be asatidha or ustads of ours and ulama from the Hanafi community that I'll be like, what are you saying, you crazy guy? But I told him generally that if you're in a crowd, if you're in a group of people, then you should just join with them, be with them, right? So that in that way you are not causing inconvenience by requiring everyone to stop for your individuals. So you're not inconveniencing people, number one. Because for you to pray every single prayer at your individual time, it would require you to stop the vehicle or the journey or to find a service station or so on and so forth at your particular time. So the first thing is not inconveniencing. And not inconveniencing is quite important. Second thing is, or even before that, the other opinion is very valid. Very valid. It's very strong. Or it's strong at least. Forget very strong. It's strong. It's there. It's, it's very, very reasonable argument. And it's there, and therefore we should honor that. And if someone's following that, we can't say that you're doing something completely outside of Islam. No way. He's following a valid opinion. So valid opinion, not inconveniencing. Another issue is the sunnah of jama'ah. If you were to pray alone, you would be missing the sunnah of the jama'ah, that everyone's praying jama'ah and you are not. And that's another fadila, another good thing that you're missing out. Another problem would be that you would be basically kind of doing something quite different and alien or rare or, something away from the rest of the group that you're in. And that could create some sort of discomfort and defeat the purpose of the whole journey, which is of mahabba and ukhuwa and building brotherhood and so on and so forth. And obviously we could discuss the topic more, but I told him generally that go with the flow. But generally, obviously, if you are in a large group and you got your own, you can do another jama'ah at your own individual particular times, then that's fine. You should do that. But since he is telling me that there is no, if I was to miss the jama'ah with them, then that's it. I'm going alone. That's it. I'm the only one. I'm singled out. I would miss jama'ah. I would inconvenience them. At the same time, I will be missing out a valid opinion and so on and so forth. So I said to him, tafaddal, go on and pray with the rest of the people. Go with the flow. And I hope that makes it clear that because some people may be under the impression that this guy's some, some crazy lunatic Hanafi, But generally, it's not. It's fine. Honestly, it's about what seems to be reasonable and what's strong as an argument, and we respect adillah, of course, definitely, verily so. And if anyone disagrees with me or anything that we say in this durus, you are wallahi more than welcome. Please email me, imam@darulummah.org.uk. Call me, and the number's there, inshallah. I won't say out on public social media, but generally, if you call the reception, they'll give an extension number for me, or just speak to me when you see me, inshallah, and let's speak calmly. Anything you disagree with, let's discuss. I have no problem. I will learn from you. If there is something that you want to tell me, honestly, I'm not one of those people that think that you can't learn from someone I will learn from you. I will sit down. I will take notes. Okay? And if there is something beneficial to learn from you, definitely so, inshallah. Musa alayhi was told to learn from Khadir, right? And he was very knowledgeable. But generally, knowledge is knowledge, and we respect it from anyone, inshallah, tabarak wa ta'ala. The call to prayer, adhan and iqama, its commencement. Okay, so adhan is the call to prayer, and iqama is the commencement, or the, from qama yaqumu, to stand up, or to commence it, or to initiate it, or to start it up, basically. The adhan and iqama are emphasized sunnahs, so sunnah mu'akkada, for the 5 daily prayers, and the Friday prayers, yet not for any other prayer. So they are emphasized sunnahs of the 5 daily prayers. And that's why we don't call adhan for Eid prayers. Do we? Do you? Or for janazah prayers? Do we? No. Or for any other prayers. We don't do the adhan for it. We do the adhan for the salawat al-khams al-maktuba, okay, and adhan and iqamah are both emphasized sunnahs. The hadith are very, very, available there for you to read and find out why they're there, or that the fact that they're there, inshallah. So they emphasize sunnahs of those prayers. And we will come and see, because once we were, and again, another story, we were on a little trip in Alexandria, and we were eating in a cafe, Zanilis. It's a very nice cafe on a little island in Alexandria, in the Muntaza Park. Very nice place. If you ever go to Alexandria, make sure you go to Muntaza Park and go to Zanilis Cafe, have some desserts there, have a cup of tea there. It's lovely. It's just like all around you, it's just water, and you can see like yachts and nice things all around you, and you're relaxed, and it's reasonably priced. Generally, we were sitting there. I sound like I'm marketing that place too much. Okay, so we were there, and we were about to pray Maghrib. And there was only 3 of us that are going to pray, or 3 or 4. And one of the brothers that are with us said, what's the point of doing the adhan? No one else is going to join us. What are you doing the adhan for? Adhan, the whole concept, the maqsad of it, the purpose behind it is to call people to prayer. There is no one you're calling, and therefore why should you do it? Answer is, it's an emphasized sunnah regardless. Okay? Inshallah, we'll talk more in the future, inshallah, in these topics. But where there is evidence that it's a sunnah, we follow that, inshallah. Ta'abbudan, for the sake of ibadah, for the sake of thawab and ajr. When one hears the adhan performed according to the sunnah, he should respond to the one performing it, and then make dua for the Prophet ﷺ to be granted the station of mediation wasila. Page 190 will tell you the dua. It's basically, what's the dua of adhan? اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعث اللهم المقام المحمود الذي وعدت إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. That's the dua he's talking about. The phrase Allahu Akbar is said 4 times at the beginning of adhan, while the remaining phrases are said twice. The same applies to the iqamah. And again, bit of difference of opinion. Iqamah, according to other madhahib, are telling you that it's half of what adhan is. So they say Allahu Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasul, like Islam Masjid. Okay? But as far as the Hanafi legal system is concerned, it's like the adhan. No need to fight, it's fine. If you want to say it, individually one by one, no problem, tfaddal. But this is and there are evidence and a hadith behind proving this, right? The same applies to the iqamah. Hence the person calling the adhan says the following: Allah is the greatest. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Okay? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's adhan obviously, sounds like iqamah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. That's the general adhan. But for Fajr we say, what do we say? As-salat. Yes. As-salatu khayrun min al-nawm after حي على الفلاح. And we say that twice. In the adhan for Fajr, he adds, prayer is better than sleep. As-salatu khayrun min al-nawm twice. In the iqamah, he adds, the prayer has commenced. Qad qamat as-salah twice. Both additions for Fajr and for the iqamah are said after the phrase, come to success, hayya al-falah. Okay? So, qad qamat as-salah is after hayya al-falah, and so is as-salatu khayrun min al-nawm after hayya al-falah. Allah is the greatest twice again at the end. La ilaha illallah once at the end. The person calling the adhan should pause shortly between each set of phrases, while he should hasten in the iqamah. And you see how it's done, and that's how it should be. Iqamah should be short and quick, and the adhan should be longer. Okay? Between the two, he should sit for a short amount of time, except for Maghrib. At Maghrib, you are allowed to say the adhan straight away, and then straight away say the iqamah, and then go straight into the salah after that. Okay? But generally for Asr, Dhuhr, and Isha, and Fajr, you should sit and you should wait for a little bit of time between the adhan and the iqamah. It is just like for someone in the state of major ritual impurity to perform either the adhan or the iqamah. So if you need a bath, a mandatory bath, you shouldn't do. It is basically disliked, makruh, for you to do the adhan and the iqamah. Or for someone in the state of minor ritual impurity to perform the iqamah. So generally, if you're in the major al-hadath al-akbar, major ritual impurity, then adhan or iqamah. And if you haven't got wudu, then it is disliked for you to even just do the iqamah. Why? Because you're about to go into salah. What are you doing, akhi? Why are you doing the iqamah for? You haven't got wudu. So how are you going to join? You're telling everyone to come and join the prayer, but you don't have wudu. That means you're going to go and do wudu, come back. And therefore you should have wudu from beforehand. Neither of the two may be recited except in Arabic. We can't say come to prayer in English because we live in England. Okay, this is very important. And this is very important to remember in the future as well. Okay? And the debate will come at a certain time. And we can see it, that, the debates will come in the future that, hey, the whole concept of adhan is to call. And so let's call in English. God is great, God is great. We testify. And people might want to do adhan in a melodious tone in English. Come to pray. We don't know what might happen, but generally it has to be in Arabic, okay? Even if it is known that it is the adhan according to the sounder position. So there might be another opinion that allows you to say it in a foreign language, but it's saying the sounder opinion, the preferred opinion is that we should stick it in Arabic or say it in Arabic. It is recommended that the person calling the adhan be a righteous person. And so we think sometimes, why is it that the people that do adhan are always like quite elderly? And because it's really important, it's quite important to make sure that the person doing the adhan, we can see righteousness. And you might say, well, how do you know? Have you been inside their heart? We haven't been inside the heart, but we can see the effects of righteousness in someone. And we as Muslims, as human beings, are required to follow what's apparent, right? We can't go into someone's heart. And so if someone is righteous on the apparent side of things, on face value, then we take that, inshallah, and we go with that. It is recommended that the person calling the adhan be a righteous person, be one who knows both the sunnah of how to perform the adhan as well as the prayer timing. So it should be someone that knows the sunnah, the masail and the ahkam of the adhan itself and of the prayer times, because obviously he would be required to know the prayer times to call the adhan. Or in modern day example, as someone that can read the timetable. But obviously back in the days when there wasn't a fixed timetable, you would have to have someone that's qualified or skilled at knowing the times, looking out into the open and seeing so they'd have a mu'adhin, and that was someone that would be quite experienced at telling the time. Be in the state of ritual purity, so he shouldn't be requiring a bath or wudu. He should have both bath and wudu. Face the qibla, place his index finger in each ear, and turn only his face towards the right when saying come to prayer, and towards the left when saying coming to success or come to success. So hayya ala salah, just his head, not his whole body. Okay, that's what he's saying here. And just his head towards the left, hayya ala falah. Now we come to conditions, shara'it of the prayer. Should we go in? Should we carry on? Or shall we stop? Conditions are going to be connected with the arkan, the integrals of the prayer. So conditions are things that are generally before the prayer. So for your prayer to be successful and acceptable and right according to Islamic law, there are certain conditions, and it's quite easy to read and understand. And then there are those parts or those things that are integral, fara'id, arkan of the prayer itself. And then there's wajibat. Just like we did in wudu. Remember we said that there are conditions, and there are fara'id of wudu, and there are sunan of wudu, and so on and so forth. Here there will be arkan of the prayer, the fara'id of the prayer, the wajibat of prayer, and the sunan of prayer, and it will be a bit longer in terms of listing. And inshallah it will be interesting bi'idhnillahi tabarak wa ta'ala. Should we read the shara'id on the integrals, or should we leave it? What do you say?
No, I don't know.
What do you say? Are you his brother?
Yeah.
Oh, mashallah. What do you say?
I think we should go for a bit.
A bit? What do you think?
No, I'm okay with anything.
It's okay with anything. That's the spirit, mashallah.
Go on with the flow.
What do you think? Let's read a few.
Yeah, I feel like this page.
Okay, khalas. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It is, conditions, shara'it of the prayer. So these are generally things before the prayer. You need to make sure that these things are intact for you to go into the prayer. It is not valid to begin the prayer without having fulfilled its conditions, which are namely being in a state of ritual purity from both minor and major ritual impurities. Makes sense, right? Make sure you got wudu and you don't need the bath. Being free from any physical filth on one's garments, body and place of prayer, except for that which is excused. Page 61 will tell you, and we covered that, the amount that's excused. Spoke a bit about that, didn't we? So to make sure that your clothes, your body, and the place of your prayer is also pure, and it doesn't have any filth. 205 says to you, quite interestingly, that is the place of both feet, both knees, both hands, and the forehead. If, however, one's garments fall onto filth elsewhere during the prayer, and there is no transfer, the prayer is still valid. So basically, if you're outside praying Salah in a service station, and generally we pray towards the corner, isn't it? Because we don't want to cause any inconvenience to anyone. But then also in the corners we see stains. Like there might be alcohol, or might be anything else. So we don't know if it's 100% clean or not. And therefore, to be on the safe side, you might put something down, right? However, if you think that the ground is clean, you can pray on it, no problem, inshallah. The hadith is very famous that the ard, the whole land has been made a masjid, a place of prayer for the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. He's one of the fadilas of this ummah. But if it's downfall, or generally it's safer to put something down to make sure that even if you can't have something big enough to cover your whole, like a musalla, then to make sure at least it says both feet, knees, and hands and the forehead, you have something there. So you might have to get sometimes you get newspaper, isn't it? So you put some there, put some here, put some here, to make sure at least these parts that are touching the ground are not falling on dirt. Covering one's nakedness, awra, which for the man is the area right below the navel until right below the knees. For a man, your awra is right below the navel, just below the belly button. But obviously covering the belly button also is just making sure it's everything covered, and also until below the knees. This part, what does that mean? That means that you shouldn't reveal this part for any reason, even if it's for swimming. You should still try to wear 3/4 trunks. Obviously, there are other opinions that say that it is allowed for you up to your thighs. Does that make sense? Because there are hadith that say the Prophet ﷺ was seen like that on occasions, and therefore it's allowed. But generally, the famous opinion, or the opinion that we follow, is that you should cover your nakedness from your belly button up until your. Then football comes into the question. What about football? Because they're all wearing up to their, right? Everyone's showing their knees, isn't it? Should we go into football, or should we just leave it? Let's hear it, right? Football. Well, okay, so you want to watch football, you want to play football. Generally, if you're playing football, it's alright, because you're going to cover yourself anyway, right? It's safer. Unless you're following that Maliki opinion, generally, which allows you to, or the general opinion that allows you to show your knees up until your thighs, mid-thighs, at least to make sure that your actual private part is completely covered. That's there. And the funniest thing that I saw, and I like to say a funny thing when I gave you these tense moments, because I don't want, because it gets a bit too tense, you have to say a funny thing. So once we were going to, again in Egypt, we were going to Sinai Mountain from Cairo. 12 of us, or 10 of us, took a microbus, and we were going, and we came to a place called Hammam Fir'aun, the bathroom of Fir'aun. It's along the seashore, and it's basically somewhere along there. Along that, the Sinai province area, there's like a seaside, and then there's like a seaside which is, there's a sea, and there's a seaside which is quite small, and there's like a cave area in which basically, supposedly, Fir'aun, or the known Fir'aun, or the Fir'auns used to relax there, they used to have a bath there, they used to chill out there. There is another similar place in Marsa Matruh called Hammam Cleopatra's bathroom. And we went and visited that recently. It's very nice water, and it's quite royal, honestly. It's like you have a massive rock, and there's a huge gush of water that comes. And it's interesting that the whole seaside is quite shallow. So all the water in the seaside is quite warm. And then there's like a big rock, which basically causes the water to flow upwards. And then there's like a little space inside that rock, in which ideally you could sit inside there like a shower, if you wanted to have a shower in the seaside. But generally, what happened is we were playing in this Hammam Fir'aun place, And we basically wanted to check the place out. We were seeing like sights as we were going, and we wanted to pray. And the funniest sight ever. Have you ever seen someone praying in complete, like, you know, them trunks? Honestly, you could see the shapes of everything. And we don't want to speak about anything. But it was very, very funny because they were proper sincerely praying. Allahu Akbar. And they were going in, basically. And we were like surprised and shocked. For the first time I actually saw that someone's... But because everything was quite, the shapes were being seen, I think that would even be wrong, right? Because the awrah, you need to make sure that the shape of everything is covered. Football, if you're playing, try to make sure you're covering yourself. Swimming, try to make sure you're covering yourself properly. If you are watching and you want to say, I take the opinion of the one that allows it, then for argument's sake, you can get away with it maybe, right? Khalas. And there are so many more nasabs that watch football, right? In fact, one of the biggest hobbies of our Darul Ummah Farighin is that they like to watch football, and it's quite common. So it's okay generally, I suppose. But then of course for football you need to please make sure that it doesn't distract you from your main important ibadat. It's so important. Muhammad Salah, what did he do last Sunday? Mo Salah. 20 minutes before Maghrib, what did he do? It was Liverpool and what is it? And Everton, was it? I don't know anything about these teams, by the way, but I was there watching it. So what Mo Salah did, the Egyptian player, the very famous guy, exactly 20 minutes before the end of the game, and it was about 10 minutes before Maghrib time, you know, there was someone came out with the number 11-9, right? And they swapped. And I was bewildered. I was like, why? I was just told like a few minutes before that this guy is Egyptian, everyone loves him, he's so good and he's so practicing. I was like, why is he going up? And you know, a few minutes later, when Munich scores, and you know, and that's it. They kind of draw because of that. And maybe if he was there, it would have been different. But then we see that I think it was because of Salah. So Mo Salah, because of his Salah, left the football game. So we were watching, someone was watching on the phone, and we said, let's go pray, let's go to Maghrib. And he's like, let's watch it. I was like, Mo Salah went to Salah in the game. We were watching the game. Come on, there is no way we can justify missing the Jama'ah in the masjid for watching this game. So football is very, very lucrative, very interesting and very fun. And you know, you should play football, it's good, it's a good sport. But don't let it distract you from your ibadat, then becomes problematic. And that's with anything, not just football. Anything that distracts you from your ibadat and from a salawat is wrong and it's not right, and therefore you shouldn't be too indulged in it. And for the woman, the entire body except for the face, hands and feet. So for the woman, her awrah is the whole body except for face, hands and feet. So then niqab comes in, and that's another debate. I don't want to go into that now, but there is an argument for that. Generally, you know, some will say wajib, some will say you don't need to, some will say it's okay. But if a sister wants to wear the niqab, there is no way you can stop her. There is no way you can stop her. Okay, that is her freedom to choose, and that is her evidence to choose, and that is her opinion to take. If she wants to wear the niqab, tafaddal. If a family wants to educate and to bring up their children in the niqab, okay, you can't stop that. Tarbiyah is something else. If within a family, between husband and wife, they have a mutual agreement that the wife wears a niqab, and this is something that they go by, that everyone has, because at the end of the day, marriage is all about understanding. And if this is an understanding between themselves, okay, there is nothing you can say. Okay, because other things come into play there. But generally, the concept of niqab, you know, it's a different upon mas'ala. If someone is not wearing niqab, it doesn't mean that they are outside of Islam, or that they are less in Islam, they are less in any way. As long as the lack of covering is not to show off, right? And that's for anyone. Okay, if I'm wearing tight t-shirts to show off, then that's a problem. Just like it would be for a sister if she was to wear tight clothing. And it's a long discussion. It's known. I think it's known. But if anyone has any questions, you're more than welcome to ask, inshallah. The nakedness of the slave girl is the same as that of the man, except for the abdomen and the back, which are part of her nakedness. And this is old. Okay, so don't go into that too much. Okay, another condition of moving on swiftly. Another shart of the prayer is facing the Qibla. Okay, itself, for one in Mecca who can see the Kaaba, or facing the direction, the jihah of the Qibla for others. So if you're in Mecca and you can see the Kaaba itself, otherwise the direction of it. The entrance of the prayer time, okay, so the condition of you to pray Asr is to make sure that the Asr time has come in. The intention, the place of which is in the heart. Very, very important. You need to make sure you have an intention for the Salah. You need to make sure your intention, and make sure that intention should be inside the heart or inside the mind generally. For you to say it orally, audibly, if you want to say it, if it helps you to reiterate or to emphasize or to bring you into position. Because sometimes saying something verbally helps you to bring your... Are we on the same page? So sometimes saying something, like, it brings you into the zone, right? So if you think that saying it loudly will help you to bring your intention, your heart firm and knowing exactly what you're doing now. Because even in daily life, I'm saying, I'm okay. You tell yourself you're okay sometimes. Even though you know you're okay inside, but you tell yourself, I'm okay, it's going to be fine. But to bring yourself back into it, to make sure you're fully attentive of that, sometimes you say it. So if someone wants to say it, you can't stop him. But to make the saying a part of the salah, and you have to say it, that's also wrong. We can't say this is part of the salah because the intention is required, and mahal and niyat mahal wal qalb, the intention, the place of it is inside the heart. The tahrima, the takbir al-tahrima, Allahu Akbar, the first Allahu Akbar, opening Allahu Akbar of the prayer, the place of which is the tongue, hence it must be uttered such that one can hear himself. Additionally, it must coincide with the intention in the heart without a separation like talking, eating or any action that contradicts the actions of the prayer. Likewise, everything uttered in the prayer which excludes the intention takes the same ruling, so one should give it due consideration. So when you're in salah, make sure you're focusing. Khalas? Generally, takbir al-tahrima, you will find, is one of the arkan, one of the integrals of the prayer, but also one of the conditions of the prayer to make sure that the prayer is starting off correctly. Does that make sense? Because that is the point, right, where everything meets. Before salah and after, before salah and in salah is the tahrima. That's what defines the difference. That's the cutoff point. So we find here that the tahrima itself is a shart, but also a part of the salah itself. And we will come to the integrals, inshallah, in the coming lessons, bi'idhnillah tabarak wa ta'ala. And bi'idhnillah, it will all become clear. Shall we stop now? Is that okay? Inshallah, tabarak wa ta'ala. Any questions?
I've got two. One question is, I was leading at school for Zuhr, and I was at Zuhr time, and I was praying before, but I forgot the sitting down part between the two.
Okay.
So then, but I realized after. So then, after I only did one sajda, but then after those two students, they had an argument that it was supposed to be two sajdas. So
yeah, it should have been two.
Oh.
Sajda generally is two. Sajda to tilawa is one. You know the ayat that you say, because it can get confusing sometimes, and it can get confusing sometimes. That for reciting an ayah of sajda in the Quran is one sajda, but for sajda to sahu, for forgetting, you should do two sajdas. Okay, and the hadith that I say they mention two sajdas. Okay.
And the second question was, when you sing the rapturous people, if you're praying at home like in a jama, and who would give the call?
So generally, if you say, for example, family brothers, okay, so the younger brother should do the adhan iqamah and the elder brother should lead the prayer. Okay, when it comes to imam, there are certain things we look out for. And generally, the owner of the house has got the first priority. The imam of the masjid has got the priority in the masjid itself. The khalif of the Muslimin has got the priority if he is present. Does that make sense? So if you have an international leader of the Muslims, then he would have priority wherever he goes, because he's the imam of the whole ummah, right? But the imam of the masjid, he gets priority. So even if someone else came, really, really big sheikh, and if the imam of the masjid wanted to be a bit, stubborn, and he said, no, it's my right, then realistically it's his right, because he's the chosen, and he's the fixed imam for the masjid. Between your brothers, elder one. Between your family, father and son, the father. The elder one generally, or the one in a higher position, gets the position to be imam. Okay, and therefore when you go to a place like shopping centers, you should always try to choose the imam to be someone from the people that you should ask. Some people I've seen in shopping centers, they just want to do imamah themselves, and this is not something nice. Okay, because I've seen it, honestly. I've seen a brother in Westfield, from 20 minutes before for Maghrib time, he's dressed proper casually. Maybe he's a hafiz of the Quran. It's fine, no problem. But he was hogging the front seat. He was just waiting there to lead, and that's not right, because how do you know someone of greater knowledge is not going to come afterwards, right? So you should, if you're in an open space, manners are that you should ask around, do you want to lead? Are you someone that's more, hafiz of the Quran, or someone that's alim, so on and so forth? And you should choose based on that. But the funny thing is that brother that was waiting, honestly, he was waiting for 20 minutes, and then some uncles came in, like, what are you doing? And they sent a brother with jubba and stuff, and then he was leading. But that was their obviously way of knowing righteousness and so on, someone that's covering themselves properly and so on and so forth. But yeah, you should try to find out who's the more suitable person for the imam and the iqama and for the adhan and mu'adhin and so on and so forth. Okay, any other questions?
So you've done wudu, you've prayed Dhuhr, and then you've done wudu for Asr, you're praying Asr. And then say at some point after Zuhr has passed, you've realized that your wudu, or you made a mistake, you missed one of the fards for wudu. So therefore, do you need to redo Zuhr for that salah? Or do you need to make up for Zuhr at that time?
So
Zuhr has come in, for example,
okay,
and you've missed a fard with genuine mistake, you don't realize.
Okay.
Zuhr time has passed,
Okay.
and now you've realized.
Yes.
So now do you need to make up at that point, or?
So generally, the hadith say that when you forget a prayer, you should pray it as soon as you remember it. Okay, or if you make a mistake that breaks your prayer, then as soon as you're aware of that, you should pray that prayer. Generally, if you miss a fard of the prayer, there's no way of making it up, even in the salah. So if you, for example, didn't recite any Quran whatsoever in one of the rak'ahs, then especially in the first rak'ahs of fard, then that's missing a fard, right? And therefore you can't make up for it. So Salat al-Sahw wouldn't cover that, right? If you, for example, miss takbir al-tahrima, then your salah, you'd have to repeat it. If it's wajib, something wajib you miss, and we'll find out what the wajibat are, then if you're in the prayer still and you remember it, then you can do Salat al-Sahw, and that would correct, that would fix it. Khalas? If, however, the time has finished, the salah is finished, you've missed one of the wajibat or one of the fara'id, then unfortunately you'd have to, or fortunately, because you remembered, you'd have to repeat that prayer. And that would be the right thing to do. Okay? Okay? Khalas, any other questions?
See when the mu'adhin is saying, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, do you say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam after the mu'adhin?
You're supposed to say Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah as well with the mu'azzin.
Yeah, but do you send peace and salutations upon Prophet Muhammad?
Look, what we're instructed in the hadith is to say like the mu'adhin. Now if someone adaban and in love for the Prophet ﷺ and in respect and in connection to the other hadith that say that whenever you hear my name you should say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, with that in mind says sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it's fine. But then if someone just says Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, just like the Imam has said, that's also completely fine. Does that make sense?
What about in the khutbah when the khatib mentions,
Yeah.
do you also say it then?
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you could say it. I don't think, inshallah, there wouldn't be anything wrong with that, inshallah.
I got a question actually. You know, in our mosque here, when does khutbah actually start? When the imam, when they do the Bangla talk, or when the Arabic starts?
No, basically, the khutbah actually starts after the adhan. You know, they do an adhan in front of the imam, and then he stands up in alhamdulillah, and generally it's going to be, in fact, most khutbahs internationally start in Arabic. Okay, so you would know. That's one thing. But generally it's after the adhan. The adhan of khutbah itself, you need to make sure that's what deciphers, or that's what tells you that this is the khutbah itself. The talk before it, we do it, maslahatan. Maslahatan means for the sake of, to bring about goodness, because a lot of people don't understand the Arabic khutbah or the English khutbah. And so we have a small talk in Bangla to explain that same message because of the popularity or demand or requirement of the community to have something said on Jum'ah Day in Bangla as well, because it's a big congregation, and to give that same message in Bangla, if it's Urdu for the relevant communities, then that's fine. In other communities they have English and Bangla before, and they're just Arabic in the khutbah itself, and that's again another debate which we don't want to get into, inshallah ta'ala, because everything is so interesting and debatable. But yeah, that's the khutbah when adhan actually goes off.
So it's okay to pray nawafil during that time?
When he's speaking the Bangla one?
Yeah.
Yeah, pray your sunnahs, anything, inshallah. You should be fine. The khutbah itself is, when it says, the one he sits in between for. Khalas? Anything else? Generally, any questions, whether it be relevant to this or outside of it, if there are any confusions, I would like to say, inshallah, I welcome them, no problem. If we can answer, we'll answer straight away. If we can't, then we'll revise it. But I want inshallah, because there should be a platform that people can ask questions, and I hope that this message reaches everyone that's got questions, or as many people as possible, so that we can serve and we can answer those questions, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so any questions anytime, or generally in the fiqh lessons, post-fiqh lessons, inshallah ta'ala. Okay. Any questions, Shakif? You're Arif, sorry. Okay. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.